I work at Banner Ranch Bible Camp here in Wisconsin, and I've been developing our FileMaker solutions for a long time. I have actually used the first FileMaker when it came out back in the 80s because my roommate in college had a copy of it, and we used it for part of our database class and some other stuff. And then I started using it at Banner Ranch in the I don't know, late 90s sometime, and been developing it ever since then. So we have a pretty robust system, but along the way, we wanted to be able to take credit cards in person right through our FileMaker point of sale or / point of check-in apps. So Square Terminal is this little white device. It's battery powered, has a screen on it. You can access settings on it. You can connect it to the internet and so on. And Square's robust API and application runs on Square Terminal, allow FileMaker apps to process point of sale, point of check-in card payments efficiently. So the connection routes through the internet and through Square servers. There's not a direct cord from your computer to device. It comes with a nice power supply and stuff, and you can keep it plugged in all the time. Quick summary. So basically, from one of your screens, a script would run in FileMaker, which causes Square Terminal to display a payment screen. And the customer taps or swipes the card, and then Square returns a JSON response, and the FileMaker script records the payment. This is just a Square. This is kind of like my development FileMaker file, which I ended up turning into a plugin. But basically, this is a this is a test page that would appear in anybody's checkout or payment processing page. And then basically I have $10 for a payment, a test item, test note, test variation, and I'll process the payment. And that's going to start triggering that. It's going to start, and then on my screen, you can see it. It's fading in and out because of the background. It shows us a payment page. I confirm and pay, and then I can swipe a card, or I can cancel, and then it shows up in my invoice line items as payment canceled. So that's basically the nutshell of what the quick summary of what happens. So I'll just keep going through this. The Square Terminal features and price. Comes with a built-in receipt printer, which makes an all-in-one solution for accepting payments. It costs $299 and $30 for a box of paper, which will last a long time. It's battery powered, or you can keep it plugged in, and it'll last a long, several hours, long enough to do payment processing for, the beginning of an event or something like that. The Square dashboard. End users use a Square dashboard to track deposits to bank accounts, manage refunds, and many other functions. For example, I have this is our dashboard. We have climbing center transactions from Sunday and last Tuesday, and these are the 5 payments we received through the climbing center app using the Square terminal. And then using further automation, card payments can process into accounting apps without further user intervention. So in my applications, we push straight into QuickBooks using Productive Computing's QuickBooks connector. And payment data is never re-entered, and mistakes are essentially gone. So, and then in the Square dashboard, you manage the deposits for us, we manage deposits into QuickBooks by monitoring them as they go into our bank account. So FileMaker setup and use. FileMaker Square terminal integration is two parts. Basically, your configuration and settings, layouts, and scripts, and then the processing scripts. So the configuration, basically I have one record and one table, the whole API, URL, application ID, access token, etc. And then there's three portals tables, list of terminals that we own, because we own two. Device codes for the terminals. Every app has its own device code. Every FileMaker app has its own device code. And then the locations, and every one of our FileMaker apps we count a different location just to keep it easy to help keep track of which one's which. So in the settings, the user selects which terminal. Should that again. So if you go to Square settings, you pick a terminal, and the terminals are just labeled by the end of their serial number. That's just printed on the back of the device. And then here's a code to enter this particular terminal. And that code's not useful to anybody else unless you have this particular terminal. So and if you're in here, if you click on this, it says paired. Clicking on it just checks if it's paired, and it lets you know you're paired. And then generally the terminal stays logged in indefinitely until you log out and log into a new app. So processing part is you create a Square order JSON, which includes the name of the item that will be displayed on the terminal screen. Like for us, the climbing center fee, the amount to currency and note if needed. And then using the insert URL script step, you'll return an order JSON, which contains an order ID. And then that's the JSON to create the order. And then processing, that automatically creates a checkout JSON, which with that order ID and some other data. And then that makes it show up on the screen of the terminal. And then there's an X at the top left of the corner, which lets us cancel the checkout. So it's easy enough to test it over and over again. Just keep canceling the checkout. Waiting. So once you display the screen, you got to wait an indefinite period of time. Someone's going to have their credit card handy or their phone handy. Some people got to log into the phone's wallet, and so on. Takes time. So there's two ways to deal with the waiting. One is it could send a webhook when the payment is either completed or canceled, or times out, or you can do a looping status check. So I tried both. The webhook worked fine through Claris Connect, but it was slow and required a lot more setup. So I chose, spelled that wrong. Choose looping through status checks with the install on timer script. I set the interval at 0.7 seconds, and I check the status up to 25 times. The 25 is set in the config page, so you can make it longer if you need to. Depending on the speed of your internet, you might need to wait a little longer. Each time the script on the install on timer script that runs, ask Square for the status of the checkout. And then recording the final payment. The status check will return pending, in progress, complete, or canceled. The status is pending or in progress, then it loops again. If the payment is canceled or complete, then you record the payment. So for testing purposes, I'm recording the canceled payments, but this can also be turned off in the config. And then to record the payment in my apps, I'd send a payment JSON as a script parameter to a script in the file to create a new line item with the type payment and enter the method Square and the amount and so on. Then the balance due on your check-in app will be 0 and you're all set. So it's pretty straight. It works really nice. I mean, once I had it all set up and stuff, all our staff were able to use it without any problems. So a couple of notes. Key value pairs in the checkout JSON will allow the developer to set different settings. For example, you could require a signature or enter tips. The Square terminal can also use the terminal API to request and record signatures, get extra data like phone numbers or emails. It can also display a unique QR code for customers to be redirected to a customer portal, like one you might build with Better Forms. So, and that's called the customized screen interactions for non-payment workflows. And that text on the right side is from Square's documentation. So in addition to processing checkouts and refunds, you can also configure buyer-facing screen interactions and non-payment work-related workflows that collect buyer information. So if someone were to come in and they hadn't signed a release form yet, you could display the release form right there, and or a link to the release to the form or QR code to the form, and they could sign it right on the terminal with their finger or with a screen pen. I've been using it since the terminal app since the spring of 2024. Of course, I stupidly made it integral to one of our apps, and then I had to redo it all and then outside of that app. But when I found out that it worked real well, and then I turned it into an add-on, which I called the Square add-on, which I use the initials SAO. If I did that because I thought it'd be easier for me to integrate it into other FileMaker apps that we have, or to other people to use it if they want. So we use it for our summer camp check-in, event check-in, and payments, the climbing center check-in, and in-person donations at events. So, and that's nice because then the person doing the donations, they can receive checks, they can receive cash, and then now they could just, someone might say, oh, I'd like to donate $500 on my card. They just enter 500, push go, and it shows up, person taps it, and the employee can just monitor it and then make sure it's all set to be pushed into QuickBooks when they're back in the office. So the developer experience, with the add-on is you install it like you would install any other add-on using normal FileMaker procedures. And then when installed, the FileMaker can navigate to the Square add-on layout, enter layout mode, copy the buttons onto their app payment layout. And then there's directions that I have on the layout to how to modify your JSON so it's getting the right data. And then one button goes for accessing the config and setting pages, and the other is just it goes to the processing layout and then triggers the script. And then the developer needs to modify the values in the JSON object to match their FileMaker field names. And you really only have to do the modify the values in the JSON object in the buttons script parameter. Then at the end, you have to write a script called process SAO payment that is called when the payment's completed and or canceled, unless you've turned that off. And the script will receive payment information from SAO as a JSON object, and the developer will then process this data into their own system to record the payment, i.e. go to line items, layout, new record, set fields, and so on. Add-on notes. For the add-on, every layout and script is namespaced with SAO underscore, and they're all tucked away into different folders. There's an ability for the customer to make a partial payment if needed. It just pauses on the processing screen to let you enter a number, which is nice if someone wants to say, well, for us, like summer camp check-in, grandma's paying for half and I'm paying for half. You could do that. Each FileMaker point of sale or point of check-in can use one or more terminals. So for large check-ins, and organizations can have dozens of computers or iPads set up, each with their own terminal. You can also actually make the two computers share one terminal, but that gets confusing quickly. I wouldn't recommend that, but it is possible if you don't set it up right. So the SAO that I wrote has 20 scripts, 4 tables, 8 layouts, and I could reduce the number of tables by combining the lists into one. I just haven't done that. And generally speaking, by add-ons ready to go, but it'd be nice to review with somebody and clean things up. In Square, I created like here a FileMaker Square add-on developer app that they call an app. So I could use it. I'll delete it after this presentation. But this is where you set your application ID and get your access token and so on. If you want to use webhooks, you could set them up here. I'm not using webhooks, so I don't have that. And then you can show your locations and some other details, like what API version you're using, which is required to be, they have to match. What's here has to match your FileMaker app. And then you can also see your logs. So it shows a log from a little bit ago when I processed that and ended it. So you can also, this is kind of cool, you can write on it, put out a thing that says sign up, and then people can type in their email address. This is not part of the Square add-on yet. I don't have a need for it right now, but I thought it was interesting that you could do this with the Square terminal. So people can sign up like that. You can also generate a QR code. This video will run, and then that QR code can be just one link, or it can be a link with data or query parameters in it, and it'll make a unique QR code for every time it shows up. So it's not just a picture that you happen to upload, it's one that's generating the QR code on the fly. And there's a signature capture screen if you need it. And you can turn on signatures for the payments or not. And then at the end of the payment process on the terminal, it'll give an option. Do you want a receipt by paper, or do you want it by text, or do you want it by email? And if they do a text or an email, you'll capture their phone number or their email address as they do it. Here's a page of their API thing. It was very robust, very good. This is my token sandbox, the access token from the sandbox, and you can list devices. I can run it. You can see it's just going to provide a list of devices. And there's all kinds of stuff you could do. And then and this is how you test it out, make sure it works right. And this curl right here, you just have to kind of copy and paste that into your scripts, and then it works. That's my presentation on how it works. If anyone has questions or wants to see me run this again, or I don't know.
I have a couple of observations, if I may.
Yeah.
And I checked the API while you were talking. You are required to have a fairly specific terminal. I actually have an older terminal that doesn't have any digital interface at all. It's just something you tap a card on. And that's not adequate enough.
Right. It has to be this particular type of terminal, which is called a Square terminal. The other ones are called Square payment. They have other names, but this is a Square terminal, and it can run. You could log into it with your Square login data and use it just like you use an iPad for Square. If you're doing point of sale on an iPad, like we do in our camp store, you could run it on here too. It's just smaller, but it works. It's a multi-use kind of tool. But I couldn't find any other way where a credit card transaction would show up on a screen without entering a number into something on the screen and then processing it. We've tried Stripe and Stripe apps, but you couldn't trigger it from FileMaker and have it instantly show up. You'd have to, on your phone, click on the Stripe app button, put in your record ID in the notes, and then it would kind of follow through. But this works real well. It's as soon as I push start, or process payment on the FileMaker app, it starts. It shows up the screen.
So the other question I had is, you developed this into a FileMaker add-on, and you showed us a place on Square where there's some access. Is that where do you get the actual add-on itself? Is that at Square site, or is that somewhere else?
I have a script called Save as Add-on, and basically the only step in that script is save a copy as add-on package, and you just run that script, and it creates it saves onto your desktop or wherever you tell it to a add-on package. It's not really a FileMaker file. It's a bunch of XML data, basically.
Mm.
But I had to learn a little bit about making add-ons, but it works. And then once you create it, then you go into some different XML files in the or JSON file, text files that have JSON in them, and you can name the thing and put in descriptions and stuff like that. So distinction is I'm not keeping the credit card data. I'm not storing it in FileMaker. I never see the credit card. I don't do the processing. All of that stuff is out of our hands. And you're paying for it, because otherwise you're paying the security for all those numbers and everything. Yeah, no, and you could actually take the add-on and add it onto an empty file, and it will, in a sense, become its own app. But things that I did was I'm not making any new records. There's no tables or records being created in the add-on portion of the stuff. That every time you like the way I did it, it's you create a checkout, an order and a checkout. It just kind of is virtual within the variables, and then disappears when you're done. Because I didn't want to have to do all that other work and reproduce what the Square dashboard does. The Square dashboard lets me do refunds and lets me track deposits into the bank account and mirror those into QuickBooks and keep them tracked, attached to customers' invoices and so on. But yeah, the Authorize.net recently came out with a new terminal, and that with an API, and that might be another way to go too, and it'd probably be cheaper. But you still gotta buy that and set up Authorize.net. And I'm not all that familiar with it, but I was looking around before I did this presentation to see what else is out there. Well, I use Square because we already are using Square for their point of sale store, and it seemed to work out. But I use PayPal for online transactions on our people who just fill out form. Like if you go to the climbing center and you register ahead of time, you could just pay online, and most people do that. But it wasn't. People come in there like, I'd like to pay with a credit card, and we're like, can't do that. Well, let me set up the phone and hold on. Let me, that kind of thing. This now I have it just runs all the time there, and the staff in the climbing center can they basically turn on FileMaker app and then the FileMaker climbing center app, and then they can take the credit card payments. But the app does a lot more. It tracks usage of our ropes and time for belayers and things like that. So that's all separate from Square. But logs all our safety checks and all that. So that's why I have it kind of in there. The thing that was hardest was Square's API for gets is super easy. For posts was a little more complicated. And then figuring out how to use the on timer script step, that solved the problem on how to wait for the customer to actually tap their card. Because, you have to, it doesn't, there's nowhere, it would send the webhook if you told it to, but it also just kind of sits there saying, hey, we're completed. Yeah, the way that the Square works is it immediately sends back a JSON with a checkout ID. And then you just use that checkout ID to kind of ping it. Are you completed yet? Are you completed yet? It's completed or canceled. The payment data. Square does too. It creates an order payment for the order. But it doesn't, the insert from URL doesn't wait like 20 seconds for the customer to tap their credit card. Square just always returns, hey, it's been triggered and here's the ID. And then you could pull that ID or ping that ID and it'll tell you what the status is. And the status can be pending or in progress or completed or canceled. And then based on what that status is, then the script, conditionally does something.
Your presentations are always very organized, Olen, and very crisp, and it's really nice to look at. You can tell you put a lot of thought into it.
Well, thank you for saying that. I spent a little time last night finishing it.
All right.